everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we're gonna dye some Moody rainbow yarn. We are gonna be playing with Dharma acid dyes in a palette that I love to pull for dark rainbows. We have the acid dyes Cabernet, Saffron Spice, Honey Mustard, Forest Green, Dark Navy, and Deep Purple. And I'm planning on layering these dye powders onto our yarn in various ways and kind of working it through. We'll see how it goes. But before we get started, I want to add some color to our bare yarn. Now, a lot of times I might use a black along with these colors. I think I've had these colors and glazed over it with black or done something similar. But the problem is that black is so cool toned that when you mix the black with some of this like yellow, it can sometimes look a little bit more green and you lose some of that color a little bit. So I was thinking today, why don't we bring in a warmer color and start with some brown? Because I know that dyeing our yarn or dyeing rainbows over bare yarn that has like a bit of a brown in it already is so pretty that, yeah, I thought that let's start with like an all over brown tonal. So I put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves, and measured out 1 gram of the Teddy Bear Brwn acid dye. I'll show you the yarn in a moment. I plan to dye 300 grams of yarn, and this should give us some good deep coverage on our yarn to start with before we layer on the other colors. And if I went too dark with this, then, well, we'll learn for next time. But the bit of warmth in here I think will still look well with our navy and like the Cabernet, but I think won't cool out the colors that tend to be lighter and brighter, our yellow and orange. So I'm excited to see where this will end up. I dissolved our dyes with some hot tap water, not worrying about the volume because we're gonna put everything all together in one pot. Now I have my 8-quart pot about half full of just tap water, and I'm gonna add in our 1 gram of dye. Now I normally don't do this, but I did use the warm tap water from when I was heating things up to dissolve the dyes. So it's not like a cold dye bath at the moment, but this brown dissolved pretty darn well, which is great. Now I haven't added any acid in here yet, but let me grab our yarn. Okay, and our yarn is 300 grams of KnitPIcks. Oh, that made me way darker than I meant to. Ew. Well, oh, it's very pretty. I mean, oh no. Yeah, we're getting this really great layer, but it's not all over. Oh no. So let's see. I was wanting the coverage to be more even, and without acid, this dye is really striking. Shoot. I mean, this end isn't that dark. Let me sort of squeeze out some of this water. Okay, you know what? Maybe it's not as dark as I thought. That actually is fine. It's still like a little bit not as even as I was hoping for. But you know what? All right, we're gonna roll with it. I was like, oh, like a 0.3% depth of shade would be fine, and I think it's still fine. But you know, sometimes you make a guess and decide your proportions and it works great. Sometimes you just don't know. All right, let's add some acid. 2, 3, 4, 5 and a bit. I didn't even talk about this yarn much yet. The yarn is KnitPIcks Stroll Fingering Weight yarn, which is 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon. And I pre-soaked it for a couple of hours in plain tap water with no acid. But, oh my gosh, we may not even need to heat this up. My plan was to go heat it until the color absorbed, but look how clear this dye bath is already. Okay, and I mean, I did say that I had some warm water in here. Let's go ahead and just let this yarn sit in the pot for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and check in. This is not where I thought things would go. But you know what? That's the thing with like dyeing by feel. My gut, and well, let me hop in front of the camera while we wait. Sometimes I go into a project and have a very clear vision of what I want to happen, or a clear idea of the amount of dye and pigment I want to use. Other times I don't. And you know what? This intensity of brown is gonna give us something moody, even if I went for neon colors, which I'm not. I'm gonna stick with our moodier colors, and we'll see where we end up and then decide where we might wanna take this palette in the future. And you know what? There's something that's just really, really fun about that, and that we can continue to have fun with. Oh man. But you know, there were a few things I did differently. Like I should have started cold, but I figured I'm waiting for the water to heat up. I may as well just take advantage of that hot tap water, right? And rather than letting, you know, that water go down the drain. And so it is what it is. We're still gonna end up with a moody rainbow. It just might be a little bit deeper and moodier than I intended, but you know what? We're gonna have fun, because again, I'm thinking that the way the colors are gonna go on is gonna be a little bit splotchy anyway, because I plan to add the powders on to our yarn and kind of work it through, which means I need to go prepare some yarn mops. And so I'm gonna go ahead and do that and go pre-soak some more stroll in just some water. Yeah, but I'll see you when my timer goes off. Okay. You know, colors always do look way darker when they're wet than they do when they're dry anyway, right? Now, the nice thing about this, okay, that's not as dark as I thought it would be. The nice thing about it is that it is not super hot, which means that we're not gonna have to wait a super long time before we add on more color. Now, part of me wanted to do something very like dry rub-esque, if you think about those videos that I did with like the powders and moving it around. And I think that that is the general concept of what I'm gonna wanna do. But I think I want there to be more water. I think that maybe I'm really just going to try to work these colors through in place, but I don't know how much I've done with like this much volume. I am gonna wanna add more liquid. So I'm going over to that dye bath that we had and grabbing some water. Okay, we're at about 1 liter or 4 cups of water, because I'm gonna wanna be able to work the dyes through, but also be able to flip things without the colors like moving too far. So maybe this is a good spot to start. Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna be okay if we see some of the browns peeking through. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna rotate it. This way the red end can have some of the deeper browns to start. Let's go closer to 6 cups of water. Because the reds can be over there. There's gonna be some movement. We could lose our yellows, but this way our purples can have a little bit less of the brown, and I think we're about good to go. Now I'm gonna need to set up my yarn mop, which has no acid in it yet, but it's gonna be just off camera. And I'm gonna need to go put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves so we can start applying the dyes. Now, one thing I really like to do on projects like this is start in the middle, especially when we have a yellow. All right, what yellow is this? Honey mustard today. Okay, I am lining up, which you guys won't be able to really see, the colors sort of behind the back edge, so that way I can visualize a bit of this color placement as I sort of heavily bring in this mustard color. Now the hard thing, there we go, is, okay, good. I wasn't sure how much it would come up on the brown. I still don't know how far it's actually going to go through or not. But I do feel it, and you can see it too, which is the other important thing. Okay. Because yeah, one of the goals is to have the water level light enough so that way I can work the colors through, but then also potentially like move and shift things. Okay, we're going to skip the orange for now and go for the Cabernet. And I'm going to admit my glasses, my safety glasses, are fogging up a bit, which is making it a little challenging to see where I've added the powder. Now, I believe that Cabernet is a color that can give off some brownish notes at first. Bring my other hand back in. But certainly, I am really liking it. Even if that is going to feel super brown, I think that it is really pretty and very different already from a lot of rainbows I've done over the years. Now, one of the important things is that my gloves are dry before I go in to the next color, because I'd like to try to avoid introducing moisture in here. Now, as I add these dyes on in a way that feels pretty heavy, I am a bit concerned that I'm going to go too heavy with some of these colors. But, oh man. Now you'll see that I did have some of that orange shift onto our yellow. I don't want it to shift down too much. But you guys, this is looking so good. Now, the nice thing that, and the advantage that we have of applying powders onto our yarn versus doing liquid is A, I can add more color without increasing the volume of our liquid, which is a huge win. But the secondary thing here is that it allows me to almost get more coverage on our yarn, because the liquid, sometimes like as soon as it comes in, it'll kind of start sticking to the yarn. But a powder, you know, yes, we could get some like speckly bits that are gonna sort of start striking and binding right away, but there's also then a chance, because not all of this dye has dissolved until I start working it through, and that just gives us a chance to let the colors move even more. Now we could, and I'm still being very careful trying to leave space for our yellow, poor yellow. Now we will eventually probably add more water in here to help with things as well, but not until we have applied these dyes. But oh my gosh, you guys, I am so obsessed with this so far. I think that this is so gorgeous. And one of my complaints over the years has always been that the yellow feels a little too bright. Leaning into the brown may have been the right call. Because if you think about it, oh, that was a fair amount. Navy and Cabernet are both like really dark colors. But what is a super dark brown, right? Like, or sorry, a super dark orange or a super dark yellow. Those are browns. And our navy is looking a little bit black, but you know what it's not looking like? A green. And so that, my friends, is a win. I think we have found a solution. You know what I have not done a lot of mixing? I've not done a lot of mixing of various colors with brown. I've done shades with black. And I know it wouldn't technically be shades if you're using a brown, but this is what we needed, because yes, these are all like have brown notes in here, but there's a depth to it. that is just so, so good. Okay, this is our deep purple, which is a bit of an annoying color, but I mean, actually my annoyance is just because I have these zip ties over here more than from the color. I'm pretty annoyed at having to try to work this color through. Purples can also end up, a lot of browns can feel very purple as well, so it may still feel very brown. It was like when I did the muck dye, when I mixed, I'm going to add some more purple on in a moment, when I mixed all 40 Jacquard acid dyes together, and the color, I was like, what color is this? There was a very like purplish brown color. You guys, I am completely obsessed with this. Okay, that's not a ton of dye. It's definitely more dye, but just kind of want to work that through. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I think we're definitely going to need to add more dye on the other side, but we can first let things sit a bit. I'll let some of this color absorb onto our yarn a bit before we try like flipping and adding more color. Because at room temperature, don't get me wrong, we're not going to have these colors like bind completely onto our yarn. But, you know, if I'm pressing down on here, it's already lighter than it was before. So some amount might. And so, yeah, let's just wait 15 minutes before we flip the yarn and try to apply color to the other side. But this is by far the moodiest rainbow I think I've ever made. And I'm thrilled. I just want to do a jig. I am so happy. Now, it is possible that we could do, and I think that this is going to be something I need to do in the future as we like flip things over, but we could do this palette with keeping the Cabernet, the green, the blue, and the purple, but then just add some brown to our yellow and orange to make them that much deeper. That is an option as well, but I think, okay, I'm doing this, I'm very nervous. Can you tell? I was like, oh, I could lift up the yarn all the way, but I think I just want to try to keep things where they are as best as I can. And you can see that we don't have complete coverage on everything. Now, the other question is, as I try to not touch the yellow with my hands, ooh, we did not get a lot of coverage. Now, if I go into the middle of the skeins, there is more coverage in there. We may end up with a fair amount of some browns left behind in the end. That might be something that happens, in which, you know, as for that, I'll say that is what it is. I think that if I wanted, with this particular technique, to get better coverage, I should have had less acid in the yarn when we went to this stage. Which, what we could have done is I could have taken that brown yarn and then rinsed it. I could have rinsed out a lot of the acid so then we could carry on. But I'm optimistic. I am just sort of micro going in and trying to expose the areas that need the most color before we go through and apply dye to this other side. And then I guess my last note is this softness is where we are on the yarn mop, and I'm going to keep applying color onto it as we go. One of my goals for this project with starting with that brown underlayer was that if we don't get complete control over all of these rainbow hues, then we're not going to have whites that are peeking through. We'll have part of these browns peeking through, which will lead towards our moodiness. And that, I think, will still be very successful with that. It might not be like super saturated everywhere, but we're getting good coverage. Now, as I was adding in these colors, I knew that if I wanted to, I could bring in more liquid, but I tried to keep the colors in a very similar placement. And before like waiting to move it, I did sort of move the yarn in various places just to see if I could see any areas that really I felt like needed more exposure right now. But then once I was satisfied with the amount of color, I waited 10 to 15 minutes before checking one final time, and then we're ready to add more liquid and heat set things. I'm feeling like we're pretty good here. I'm gonna start grabbing some more water, and I'll be using that water that had acid in it from our brown layer. And as I pour it on, you'll notice that I'm starting the pores like in that middle area. You can see I still got some dye on my gloves, but if I go slow, the color will sort of like seep in to the edges. But by starting the color here, what I don't want is to push like the colors like from the edges in, which maybe we'll do a little bit. I do want to make sure we have liquid around these edges. And you'll see that I'm coming and just sort of moving our yarn because we're gonna want there to be able to be some color or by some color, I mean some water when we move the yarn to the side. So if we do this slowly, hopefully we'll preserve some of this color. Okay, I'm gonna take this over to the stove and start heating things up, keeping a very close eye on it. And in the meantime, I'll show you where we are with this yarn mop, which is super, super cute. I'm gonna take some of that same water I was using and kind of pour it on. Cause like we didn't really have acid in here, but my gloves did get acid in it as we were working colors through. The biggest surprise here is that there's not a ton of green in it. That color maybe was just sticking a little bit faster. But I'm gonna go ahead and steam set this guy off camera for 30 minutes just so we can get some heat. And I'll be back soon to check in on our rainbow yarn. Okay, we're getting some steam, which is great. So we're now across two burners here and here on my stovetop. And you can see that there is still color. Actually, there's still some powder on the edges. Yep, some blue. I really don't want things to escape, but we definitely need more liquid. I don't want anything to burn. And now I'm using that other dye bath to steam set the yarn mop. So I added 4 tablespoons of white vinegar into, how many cups of water was this? 500 milliliters of water. And I'm gonna have this off to the side. And this is what I'm gonna bring over periodically to add more liquid. Because you can see now as I move, oh gosh, I hope we did not use way too much color. Oh man, I'm getting nervous. Oh, I'm getting nervous. But you can see now that at least when we move it, there is water there. So that is good. And I can continue to add more. The concern is just that like if I add way too much liquid, then the dyes are gonna move through way too much. But I'm gonna just keep a very close eye on things. And I'm gonna bring this heat down to low, and we're gonna do something I don't do a lot, which is gonna make things both easier and harder for me. But I'm gonna cover this. I'm gonna cover it so that way we don't lose a lot of our heat. I now have the burners on the lowest setting, so this way we can trap the heat inside the pan because that steam will come up and hit the top, but also we're gonna lose less moisture. So I'll check back in after 10 minutes. Okay, it has been 10 minutes. The good news is that this is looking very steamy and very wet. That is excellent news. I can take a little bit of this water and just at those corners where I'm feeling nervous, add a little bit more add a little bit more liquid. I know that that's going to cool things off. I have a feeling I'm going to heat this for more than 30 minutes total, but good news all around. I'll see you. I'll do check-ins off camera. I'll see you in about 20 minutes. Okay, we've now had about 30 minutes of heat, and well, that's good news. I mean, there's still some color down there, but not that much. Okay, the green is looking good. I see a little bit in the navy around the edges. Seeing a little bit of yellow. Maybe a hint of orange. How are we doing? Hey, that is looking good. I mean, we do still have some dye like on these edges that I'm dealing with, but this is great. Okay, great news. I'm gonna let it sit here for 20 more minutes, and I think we'll be able to call it after that. Woohoo! Okay. Oh man, our rainbow is so moody, and I have a feeling that we have completely stained the pan. I mean, there's definitely still some dye. Hopefully we're not going to have a bleeder on our hands. It's amazing that, you know, those colors are still like the lightest, right? But it's hard to make them that much darker. Okay, I'm going to turn off the heat and leave the yarn here in the pan to cool off. At least for a little while. At some point, and I'm just sort of cleaning off the edge, at some point I think I'll remove it, but for now, there's no harm in just letting things sort of sit as they are. Okay, so I'll see you in a bit after things have cooled off. I let this yarn cool overnight, and we'll see how much, if any, dye is left in here, which, all right, I'm seeing a little bit of yellow. I'm seeing some staining on the pan, but I'm feeling optimistic. Let's go wash it. All right, we just have to hope that it's not gonna bleed because I have no idea how much dye I added. But let's add a little bit of some clear dish soap into our water. And since we did add dye powders on here, we might see like a little bit of something come out. But that's really not bad given how dark and saturated this yarn is. Ooh, I do see a hint of our base color right there. But fantastic, fantastic. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, we are so good. Like there is a tiny hint of something, but that is almost nothing. I'm gonna rinse this a couple more times and I'm gonna pop the yarn in my spin dryer and hang it up to dry. This yarn is amazing. Now, before I even remove the zip ties and fluff things out to look pretty, we definitely have some of the brown base color coming through. And this is a reason why I'm so glad that I dyed that brown base first. And remember when I was concerned there was too much brown? No, I think it's perfect. Like, yes, it's pastel that's peeking through, but it's making it feel like I dyed a yak blend. This is unbelievably perfect, and what did to the yellow and the orange, I feel like is what has been missing every time I've tried to play around with this. Ugh, it's amazing. Now I think I was a little heavy-handed with the Cabernet. Some areas are so saturated, but I think overall, like the coverage is reasonable. I think that I maybe would like to do this again, and actually let me fluff it up. I think that if I were to do this again, what I might be inclined to do is use a mixture of direct dye powder application, but then also have some liquid dyes. And specifically, I'm thinking I would dye this as is, and if I already had some liquid forms of these dyes mixed up, then with the yarn spread on the counter, I could go through and spot check areas where maybe I wanted a little bit more coverage before steam setting. And then I could layer in more color. Now I could go about this and just hand paint the entire thing. I don't always love doing that. I find that it can, with this much surface area, it can be really challenging sometimes to get the coverage that you want, but I also should revisit doing that more. So, so I guess there is that as well. But I think that brown, layering with brown is probably the way to go. And a lot of this was inspired by playing with blends over the years of rainbows on that yak. I shared a picture that I actually dyed after I dyed this particular yarn, but just the way that colors respond to a little bit of a cool toned brown base or warm toned gray worked so well. Like the orange and yellow feel appropriately more muted and less vibrant in a way that works with all the other colors. I suppose the only other note I have for myself is I would use a little bit less Cabernet and a little bit more of the royal purple. But otherwise, I adore this yarn, and I know it's not going to be in my shop very long once I list it. And I have to say, I am really, really tempted to keep all of this yarn for myself. And so I am absolutely struggling to not keep it. But I think I'm going to want to play around with this technique and make some kind of gradient yarn for myself to then use for a cowl or a scarf or something and have this Moody rainbow go through it. So therefore, I will list it, but I was tempted. Now, before we talk about the yarn mop, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to all of the ChemKnits fiber patrons, including Bernadette Crum, Don Jans, Jessica Parco, Tamara Svanez, and the rest of the names you see right here. Patreon is a platform that can allow you to contribute to all of the content here directly, and I offer some fun perks like early access to the Dyepot PS series. And depending on the level that you select over on Patreon, there's different perks that you get, including, a behind the scenes live stream every month and more. You can find more information over at patreon.com/ChemKnits. ChemKnits patrons, thank you so much for all of your support. I cannot believe we are approaching episode 100 of this series. Oh my gosh. Our yarn mop is so different from our yarn. Now, to be fair, we still have a lot of rainbow tones in here. I would say of all the colors, there is some green, but not as much. I guess that color just didn't stick to the gloves as much as some of the others. But it is funny because it's not the most pastel yarn mop I've ever created. But compared to the saturation of our yarn, it is. It's pretty pastel in comparison, which I do think that this could be an interesting contrasting color for the dark rainbow. They're very different. The color progression in here is a bit more random, but it's got some of the same values. And so rather than having like a pastel gray or white as the lighter color, this might actually pair with that pretty nicely. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I love dyeing yarn and playing with rainbows and playing with rainbow yarn in different ways. I feel like there's so many different rainbow colorways I've created over the years, and a lot of them have been part of a live stream. And so therefore, the footage exists, but I don't always have a standalone episode with it. And so that is something that, in the archives of my memory of colors, when I've been going back, I'm like, oh, I need to bring rainbows into just Dyepot Weekly and Dyepot PS more often because dyeing them makes me so happy. So unbelievably happy. And I am so happy that I finally feel like I hit, and we don't even have proportions or anything, right? This was all done very much by feel, and that just was a wonderful, perfect way to explore, and I am thrilled. Please, please, please subscribe and turn on your notifications. I've had some comments recently where people have said that they were randomly unsubscribed from the channel. And, you know, then they resubscribed, which thank you. But so double check, because hopefully that didn't happen to you. But subscribing and engaging with videos, leaving comments and things, all that helps YouTube recommend the videos to new people, which helps the channel continue to exist and be. And I could not do this without any of your support. So thank you for supporting and encouraging my color journey. Like, from the bottom of my heart, I love that I get to play with yarn and color every day, and I am just unbelievably grateful, and I am just so happy when I find something like this that just feels like an aha moment, you know? And that's the thing with exploring with color and yarn and playing around with different techniques, because over the years I'll do something and it just like inspires me in a way, and I get so excited, and then like I dive in and play more and more. And so yeah, I'm just really, really excited. But anyway, thank you so much for watching.